Hello and welcome everyone to today's session, How to Reach More Shoppers Through an Accessible Website. Thank you for joining us today. In today's session, we'll be discussing about why is accessibility important in online shopping space and what businesses can do, particularly right now, to make sure that their websites are user-friendly, more inclusive, as well as welcoming to everyone. We're also joined today by Georgina Coleman, CEO and founder of Purpl Discounts, an online platform that offers exclusive discounts to the disabled community. Georgina will be sharing her insights on the importance of supporting the disabled community, helping businesses to connect and have a wider outreach in the disabled audience.
I started Purpl because I was out shopping with my cousin. We were out shopping just before Christmas in 2023. And I realised that my son could get a student discount in the shop that we were in. And I just turned around to my cousin and said, well, why don't I get a disabled discount? It's really expensive being disabled. It was a very flippant comment, but it kind of stayed in my head and I couldn't forget about it because at the time, it seemed really unfair to me that we give discounts to everyone else. You know, teachers, key workers, students, carers, but not the one community that faces the biggest financial challenges. So that's how the idea of Purpl came about. And we started by building our technology to ensure that we could verify people properly, because you don't want anyone getting access to those discounts who shouldn't be getting access to them. And obviously for brands, that's really important as well. So we are a closed group environment. And then we set about just speaking to brands, and I tell my story about the fact that I want to help my community offset those costs of being disabled, which on average is around, I think it's now £1,095 a month, according to Scope. But also we have a real kind of social we want to help the community. It's not just about discounts. So my longer term goal is to launch a foundation one day to give grants back to people within the community who maybe can't afford a wheelchair or an adaptation to their house to make it easier for them. So everything we do is about helping the community. So we do guides and advice and money saving kind of tips around being disabled. A lot of people might not be aware of a certain like CEA card, for example, for the cinema that they are entitled to if they need a carer with them. So we share that information, and we do a lot of that through our Purpl Life section on the website, as well as our TikTok and socials. But the goal is to have discounts everywhere to level the playing field so that we can offset those costs that we face and have more money to spend on other things, not just on, our disability and our health constantly. So for me personally, if I shop online, it's great because I can try things on at home in my own space. But on the other hand, if I have to return products, that can be really challenging as well. So for me, a real barrier is if a brand makes me pay for returns or forces me to have to go to the shop or to the post office to return those items. The post office will collect from your house these days, and some brands will allow you to do that. And I think more are doing that, and that's fantastic. And that's such a big difference for someone who can't get out independently. I don't want to have to send my husband every time I want to order something and it's not right to have to go to the post office and return it for me. I want to be able to just return things myself and not have to rely on someone else to do it. So I think that's a real big barrier for me. In store, it's accessibility. There's some shops where there's not enough space for a wheelchair to go through, and that can make it really challenging. And you get a face full of clothes as you're walking through the kind of small gap between the kind of clothes racks. So that can be quite frustrating. It's like they have not thought about everyone, or when the till points are too high, or when the staff member doesn't talk to you, they talk to the person with you, which can be frustrating as well. My husband will always say, well, he'll basically won't say anything. He'll just point to me, as in speak to my wife. And it's amazing how many people still don't talk to people when they're in a wheelchair. So I think that's important. Having lifts if there's a second floor, not just stairs. Being able to see things. If things are too high, obviously that's going to be difficult. I'm short anyway, I'm 4'11". So even if I wasn't in my wheelchair, I struggle sometimes in shops where stuff is up so high. Or hangers, you can't quite reach them because you're pulling up to try and get them. So I think just having a bit more thought around all the different types of people will make brands more accessible to everyone. And obviously with Purpl having the discount with us and demonstrating that inclusivity and that you understand the cost of being disabled and you want to help the community, plus all the other challenges that are going on with welfare cuts, cost of energy rising. There's so many additional costs that anything brands can do to align themselves with helping the disabled community is so beneficial for their brand, because the community is very, very loyal. And you not only get the disabled person who will be loyal to you, you'll get the halo effect of their friends and their family. If they're out and about, they're not likely to be on their own, so they're going to have people with them, which is great for a brand. But even online, if you feel recognized by a brand and that they're being inclusive to you, you're more likely to shop with them and you're more likely to tell your friends about it. So there's such a big knock-on impact of that. And it's a big community. It's nearly a quarter of the population and it's growing. So every brand should try and be as inclusive as possible, really. And finally, just making their websites more accessible, because we've tried very hard with Purpl and we're still learning and we don't always get it right, but we listen to our members. We always speak to members who have vision impairment or are blind to get their feedback. But that's all very well and good. But if they go to the brand website from Purpl to get a discount and that site isn't inclusive and isn't accessible, then that's not going to help that customer or our member feel like that brand really cares. So you can't just give a discount and walk away. It's got to be more than that. You need to think about the whole customer journey.
So businesses basically need to understand the impact of delivering or catering for inaccessible services for the end users. So we firstly need to be aware that there's at least 1 in every 5 people that has some sort of disability. It could be a hidden disability or it could be a physical disability. And businesses not accounting for that, you're kind of excluding them users and not allowing them to use your services to the full ability. We need to make sure, firstly, if you're delivering an accessible service, it's going to affect and reach out to your wider audience. Having that wider reach means that everybody and anybody can access your services. And also businesses need to ensure that they're at the forefront of accessibility. What we often come across is that accessibility and inclusivity is the last thought. And which is often where I see businesses getting it wrong. So if you're having accessibility as a last thought, obviously you're not going to account for, or you're not going to ensure that anything you're, for example, uploading on your website is not of an accessible nature. And this is the initial starting point where I see businesses to get it wrong. And once, because you've had the first step to be wrong, and that kind of follows you through on the whole journey. But what we would need to sort of say that businesses need to pay attention to is from day one. So you need to make sure that you're having the correct user research, you're speaking to users that are going to be using your services. So you try and understand what the needs of the end user is, because everybody's need at the end of the day is going to be different. And that is, I think, in a nutshell, going to create a better brand reputation for an organization or a business, because they are making the extra effort to reach out and have speak to users who are going to be using their services. So yeah, I think in a summary, we should be sort of thinking about accessibility from early days rather than leaving it as a last thought.
And also the combined household value of the disabled community is £274 billion. There's a lot of money. So you are turning away potentially a lot of business if you're not accessible and inclusive at all. And you probably don't even realize how many customers turn away from your website. Maybe all websites should have like a little really easy feedback that pops up if you leave the site with some accessibility type questions on, so that they could actually monitor how many people walk away from their website due to different issues that appear that impact them and their disability.
So I think there's many businesses out there that are wanting to be on that journey of delivering accessible services, and particularly ourselves. So here at Recite Me, we've got our Recite Me toolbar that specifically is used across many retail sites as well as e-commerce sites. Now, what our toolbar does is it provides a personalized and inclusive experience for the end users. Now, when I say that, it enables the user to adjust the website accordingly to their access need. So they might want to adjust the color contrast of the website. They might want to read out the website in a particular way. Or simply if somebody's first language is not English, they could set the setting of that shopping website to a language that they would find easy to understand. Now, these are small steps that we here at Recite Me are taking as an organization to just enhance the end user's experience. What we also like to suggest to other businesses that are wanting to be on a similar journey is making sure that you're fixing the key issues for the end user, such as small issues. They could be keyboard navigation. For example, if the keyboard navigation isn't correct on your e-commerce or retail site, the user's not going to be able to shop in the correct way. Simply just they wouldn't be able to place a simple order. Again, that would cause a lot of hindrance for them, and in turn that would lead them to actually visiting a physical store, which is an effort in itself because it might end up relying on other family members taking them to the physical store. So, but if in the first instance you've got the best and positive experience online, i.e., on your retail website, it will save the end user all of that journey, and it will make the experience of simply ordering something to be of a much smoother journey. What we also come across other sites is that you often come across a key issue, which is missing image alt descriptions. So there's many images, for example, again, on shopping websites or any e-commerce sites, but they don't have the correct alt description. So again, the user buying that particular product off your shopping site wouldn't know what product they're wanting to buy because that wouldn't be announced to obviously correctly to a screen reader. Again, so these key missing accessibility key areas that we come across often cause a hindrance to the end user. And usually best practice here would be for every business to embed accessibility into each department across their organization. So for example, we say embed it with your designers, work on it with your developers. And then, like I was saying before as well, conduct that user testing is very crucial to make sure that you're delivering a more accessible service and you're just making the user's journey a lot more easier, and they would want to use your website more, obviously, if it's of an accessible nature.
So when I started Purpl, it was really important. You can't have a disabled discount website and not be accessible to everyone. Otherwise, you're not actually helping the whole community. And we reached out to Recite Me very early on after seeing you on Poundland's website, I think it was. And we spoke to your team and we knew straight away that a tool like this would be perfect because there's so many different types of different disabilities and so many different needs that people want from online that your tool enabled us to offer everything to everyone, depending on what they would want. So it was a great kind of first step. You know, it's habit as well when you do the alt text, and it's reminding other people within the business, because when things are really busy, especially as a startup like us with limited resources, it's so easy for people just to do something and then forget about adding the alt text. So you've really got to kind of ingrain it into your automatic action. Every time you do a picture, you do your alt text. And we use AI for that. It's great. It's really quick and easy. We can put in the images. We can tell it the kind of alt text that we want. So it's fast. There's no excuse not to do the alt text every time. But you never know. Someone else will come along and put a picture on the website without doing that part. So it is hard to keep on top of it all. But as long as you're doing your absolute best, I think asking your members as well. We reached out early on. I think I reached out to a couple of people that I knew had vision impairments and asked them if they would be kind enough to have a look at some of the stuff we were doing. So our logo, our designs, and then obviously the website when it was launched, just to get their insights, because we're learning as we go. I don't have vision impairments, although my eyesight's getting worse as I get older. It's, you know, it is interesting actually with that happening, that I see now on packages, I'm like, oh, why have you got yellow text on white background? Like, who can read that? Even me with no vision impairment, just getting older, I struggle. So how does someone who has a disability that impacts their eyesight, how are they meant to see these things? So I think it's asking your audience. They're going to be the ones to teach you. You don't have to know all the answers, but it's making sure you want to and to take on board their feedback and make those changes and reaching out and asking those questions.
I think there's key steps that you should be taking. Obviously, the first one that we like to say from an accessibility point of view is conducting an accessibility audit. An accessibility audit gives you a good starting point. It highlights any key issues that you would have on your website. So the accessibility audit would give you a detailed finding of any top findings, say, for example, the top 10 issues that you need to tackle first, which we often come across sites such as keyboard navigation, color contrast, alt text, and these are the ones that should be fixed before and they make the user's end journey much smoother. Secondly, it would be about embedding a framework and strictly an accessibility framework across the organization so that all your teams are aware that this is the accessibility principles that they should be working towards. Obviously, there's different aspects of this. So you've got design principles that should be considered for accessibility. You've got principles for the development team, and having them embedded in each department really helps drive that accessibility across all of your organization. And then thirdly, I think it's a major part of the accessibility journey is about training and upskilling. Now that we're all aware that not everybody would have an accessibility background, specifically when it comes to the technical standards, like understanding WCAG, understanding basic design principles. So having that knowledge share across your organization helps everybody understand and empathize with the end user so that they know what they're developing for, they know what they're designing for. So having all of them little steps across the organization, I think is a good starting point for any organization if they're thinking to join the accessibility journey.
I think for me personally, because I don't have vision impairment, so I can only talk about my own experience, I think having that ability to return products for people with disabilities is really important. It needs to be easy, otherwise they're not going to shop with you. So making them have to pay more is to someone who's already got a disadvantage with either their disability or with the financial side of things, having to pay more to return an item because you can't get to a store seems really unfair to me if you are disabled. And that's the joy of Purpl, because if brands work with us, they will know our members are disabled and fit the criteria, because I can understand they don't want to give everyone free delivery, free returns or free delivery. So they could sign up, and with us, they could give free returns to all of our members and know that they are getting a verified closed group audience that do meet the requirements to satisfy that they should get the free delivery rather than giving it to everybody. So that could be a really nice way of like giving the disabled community that extra incentive to shop with that brand online and not lose business. And then in store, it's the simple things like making sure if there are steps that there is a ramp to go up and it's not just a bit of cardboard, it's a proper ramp so you can get in to the store, making sure that there's space between your aisles so that you don't feel like you're getting a face full of clothing when you get pushed through or you maneuver yourself through the space. Make it easy for people. Make sure you've got a lower level desk so that you can actually see the cashier's face when you're talking to them, and make sure your lifts are working if you have a lift.
So I think in terms of digital accessibility and any online retail services, I think accessibility should be looked at as an integral part of the business and not just as a tick box exercise. I think that's crucial because if every team member in the organization understands what's the goal of accessibility and what we're trying to achieve at the end of the day, I think that is key and vital to ensure to deliver accessible services for our end users.